Danica sat in the lawyer's office, her hands folded tightly in her lap. The air felt heavy, pressing down on her chest, making it hard to breathe. Everyone was waiting, staring at the stack of papers on the polished desk. Her mother sat at the head of the table, her expression cold, eyes sharp like glass. "The will has been read," her mother said at last, her voice flat. "Danica, you have been removed. There will be nothing left for you." The words cut through the silence like a knife. Danica felt her stomach twist. She tried to keep her face calm, to show no sign of weakness, but her fingers trembled in her lap. Across the table, Mark smirked. He didn't even try to hide it. Allison raised her chin, her lips curling in satisfaction. Their looks were not of surprise but relief, as though they had been waiting for this moment. Danica swallowed hard. For years, she had given everything to this family. She had sacrificed time, dreams, and her own life to care for her father when no one else would. And now, with one cold sentence, it was all erased. Her mother did not look at her, as though Danica wasn't even there. The lawyer shifted uncomfortably in his chair, shuffling the papers, trying to move things along. But the silence stretched, thick and suffocating. Danica could feel her cheeks burn. Humiliation spread through her body, heavy and sharp. She wanted to scream, to ask why, but her voice stayed locked in her throat. The weight of her siblings' smirks, her mother's indifference, pressed down harder than the air itself. Just when it seemed the silence might crush her, a small voice broke through. "But Aunt Danica is on TV." Every head turned. Her young nephew sat swinging his legs on the edge of a chair, his innocent eyes wide. He looked around the room, confused by the sudden attention. The room froze. "What did you say?" Allison snapped, leaning forward. "She's on TV," the boy repeated proudly, as though it were the most obvious thing in the world. "I saw her. Aunt Danica is on TV." Confusion erupted. Mark frowned, his smirk fading. Allison exchanged a sharp glance with their mother. Even the lawyer looked uncertain, his pen paused mid-air. Danica's heart pounded. Her nephew's words hung in the air, louder than any accusation, heavier than any secret. On TV? What did he mean? Why was he saying this now? The room buzzed with whispers and sharp breaths, but no one had an answer. All eyes turned to Danica, waiting. And then silence again. The moment stretched unbearable, as if the truth was just out of reach. Cut. The middle child, always the caretaker, that was Danica. From the time she was young, she was the one who cleaned up after her siblings, helped with homework, and kept peace in the house. Her mother used to say, "Danica, you're responsible. I can trust you." But those words never came with warmth. They were more like orders, a reminder that she had to carry the load others would not. Her older brother, Mark, was bold and ambitious. He loved showing off even as a boy. He dreamed of big business and fancy cars. Her younger sister, Allison, was clever, beautiful, and determined to climb the social ladder. Their mother praised them constantly, Mark for his sharp mind, Allison for her charm. But when it came to Danica, the praise was rare. She was dependable, yes, but not celebrated. Everything changed when their father fell ill. Cancer took away his strength, and suddenly the family needed someone to care for him every day. Mark said he was too busy with work. Allison claimed she couldn't handle the stress. Their mother decided Danica would do it. She didn't ask. She simply told her, as though Danica had no choice. So Danica stayed. She quit her small teaching job, put her own life aside, and became her father's nurse, cook, and companion. For years, she carried that burden. She learned how to change dressings, how to comfort him when he cried from pain, how to stay awake through long nights while everyone else slept. She fed him when he couldn't lift his spoon, held his hand when he felt afraid, and whispered prayers when he was too weak to speak. Her siblings visited from time to time, always dressed in fine clothes with stories of promotions, vacations, and parties. They brought expensive gifts for their father, things he could barely use. They smiled, hugged him for a moment, then left. Danica stayed. She washed the sheets stained with blood and medicine. She carried the weight they never touched. When their father died, Danica felt empty, not only from grief but from years lost. She had no career to return to, no savings, no recognition. Mark stood at the funeral, delivering a perfect speech that made people cry. Allison wept dramatically, clutching their mother's hand. And Danica? She sat quietly, drained, invisible. After that, Life moved on for everyone but her. Mark became successful in business, driving sleek cars and living in a tall apartment in the city. Allison married into wealth, her pictures filling magazines and social media with images of luxury. Their mother boasted about them to friends. My son, the businessman. My daughter, the society woman. And Danica? She lived in a small rented apartment near the edge of town. She worked odd jobs, tutoring, sewing, anything that paid a little. She didn't have fancy clothes or a wide circle of friends. People rarely noticed her, except when they needed something. Still, inside her there was strength, quiet, steady strength. She had endured what her siblings could never imagine. But with that strength came bitterness. She would lie awake at night wondering, was it worth it? Did anyone see what I gave up? Her mother never did. Whenever Danica visited, her mother would glance at her plain dress, her worn shoes, and shake her head. You could have been more if you tried harder, she would say, ignoring the years Danica had already given. If she mentioned Mark or Allison, her tone lifted with pride. But with Danica, it was always disappointment. The inheritance, to Danica, was not just about money. It was proof that her sacrifices mattered, proof that she was not forgotten. She wasn't asking for wealth like Mark or glamour like Allison. She only wanted acknowledgement, a sign that her years of care and devotion meant something. But now, with her mother's cold announcement in the lawyer's office, it was clear. In their eyes, she had no value. She had been erased, her sacrifices dismissed, her dignity stripped. And yet a small flame burned inside her. She had carried her father's suffering, survived loneliness, and endured neglect. That same strength told her this was not the end. If they would not recognize her, she would find another way to be seen. Because what was at stake was more than money. It was her name, her worth, her truth. And this time, Danica would not let them silence her. At a tense family dinner, the clinking of cutlery was the only sound for a long while. The table was full of food, but no one seemed hungry. Danica sat quietly at the far end, her eyes lowered. She could feel the tension thick in the air. Her mother's sharp gaze kept flicking toward her, as if waiting for the right moment to strike. Finally, Allison broke the silence. She leaned back in her chair and said with a thin smile, "So Danica, we've heard some interesting things about you lately." Danica looked up slowly. "What do you mean?" Mark smirked, sipping his wine. "Come on, don't act innocent. Word gets around. We know you've been keeping secrets." Her mother put her fork down and folded her hands tightly. "We know you've been hiding things from us," she said firmly, her tone full of accusation. Danica frowned, her chest tightening. "I don't know what you're talking about." The room grew still. Allison tilted her head, eyes shining with mock pity. "Oh really? So you've just been sitting quietly all these years? No plans, no projects, nothing at all?" Danica shook her head slightly. She wanted to defend herself, but her voice failed her. Her mother gave a cold laugh, sharp as glass. "Well, hiding or not, it doesn't matter now. I have already made the final decision." The words dropped like stones into the silence. "The will has been changed," her mother announced. "Danica is excluded entirely." For a moment, Danica couldn't breathe. She felt as though the floor had opened beneath her. After everything, every sleepless night, every sacrifice for this family, she was discarded like she had never mattered at all. Her fork slipped from her hand and clattered against her plate. Mark smirked wider, as though he had won some private game. Allison gave a satisfied nod, not even pretending to be sorry. The sting in Danica's chest burned deep. She tried to speak, but no words came. And then, out of nowhere, a small voice rose above the heavy silence. "But Aunt Danica is on TV." Every head turned at once. Her nephew, no older than 8, sat swinging his legs under the table. His eyes were bright with innocence, completely unaware of the storm his words had caused. "What did you say?" Allison demanded, her voice sharp. "She's on TV," the boy repeated proudly. "I saw her last night. Aunt Danica is on TV." The table exploded with confusion. Mark set down his glass, eyebrows furrowed. Allison shot a quick glance at their mother, her lips parting in disbelief. Even the servants paused in the corner, unsure whether to move. Her mother's face hardened. "Is this true, Danica?" she asked, her voice like ice. Danica sat frozen, her heart racing. The secret she had guarded for months was suddenly exposed by the one person she least expected. Mark leaned forward, his smirk gone. What exactly have you been doing? Why would you be on TV? Allison's eyes narrowed. Were you talking about us? About this family? The air filled with tension, sharper than before. To them, Danica's silence was proof of betrayal. Their faces burned with anger and pride, as if she had humiliated them in public. Her nephew looked around, confused by the sudden anger. But she was just telling her story, he said softly. She didn't do anything wrong. Danica's throat tightened. The boy's simple words cut through the noise, but no one wanted to hear them. Her mother slammed her hand against the table. How dare you go behind our backs? After everything we've done for you. Danica finally found her voice, quiet but steady. Everything you've done for me? She asked, her eyes glistening. Or everything I've done for you? The room went silent again, but this silence was different. Heavy. Dangerous. The truth was out now, and there was no turning back. Danica's secret begins unraveling slowly, then all at once. At first, it was only her nephew's innocent words at the dinner table. But soon, the truth came out in ways no one in her family could escape. Clips of her interview started appearing on TV. A well-known journalist had been speaking with her for months. Danica had told her story, all of it. The year she had given up her own life to care for her dying father. The way her siblings had turned their backs while she carried the weight alone. The way her mother dismissed her, belittled her, treated her as if she were nothing more than a servant. The interview was raw and honest. She talked about the cost of unpaid caregiving, about the loneliness of being trapped in duty, while others lived freely. Her voice was steady but full of pain. Viewers across the country listened, and many nodded in recognition. People had lived this story before. A daughter, a sister, a quiet one who gave everything and was left with nothing. When the family saw it, rage erupted like fire. Her mother stormed into her apartment the very next morning, her face red with fury. How dare you, she shouted, slamming the door behind her. How dare you shame us in front of the whole world? Do you know what people are saying about this family now? Danica stood still, her hands trembling but her back straight. I only told the truth. The truth, her mother spat. You dishonored us. You turned our private lives into gossip. You are nothing but ungrateful. Soon after, Mark and Allison arrived. Mark's jaw was tight, his eyes full of anger. This was your plan all along, wasn't it? To make us look bad because you're jealous of our success. Allison crossed her arms, her voice sharp. Do you enjoy this? Humiliating us? Making people think we abandoned you? Danica's chest ached, but she didn't back down. For years she had swallowed her words, but not this time. You did abandon me, she said, her voice breaking. I stayed. I cared for him when no one else would. I gave up my job, my future, my life. And where were you? Out there, living freely, while I watched him die slowly every day. Her mother shook her head furiously. Enough. Stop this nonsense. Families are not perfect, but we do not air our dirty laundry in public. You are destroying us. Danica's eyes filled with tears, but her voice grew stronger. Destroying you? I was destroyed long ago. Do you know how many nights I sat awake, praying he would make it through the pain? Do you know what it feels like to hear him cry out in the dark, and have no one else there to help? Do you know what it's like to watch your own dreams vanish while your siblings laugh about their new cars, their parties, their trips? The room fell silent, her words cut deeper than any weapon. Mark finally muttered, You're exaggerating. We visited. We called. Danica turned to him, her eyes blazing. Visited? You came for an hour, maybe two, and left when it got too hard. You never changed his sheets when they were soaked with blood. You never sat by his bed when he begged for water at 3 in the morning. You never looked into his eyes when he asked if he was a burden. I did. Every single day. And you think a few phone calls make us equal? Allison tried to interrupt, but Danica raised her hand. No. Not this time. You will not silence me anymore. Her mother's lips trembled with rage. You are tearing this family apart. Danica took a shaky breath. This family was already broken. I'm only telling the truth. In the corner, her nephew had been listening quietly. His small voice rose, soft but firm. She only told the truth, he said. Everyone turned toward him, stunned. The boy looked at his grandmother, his parents, and then at Danica. She took care of Grandpa. I remember. She was always there. Why are you angry at her for telling people? The innocence of his words hit harder than any argument. For a moment no one spoke. Mark looked away. Allison bit her lip. Her mother's face hardened, but her eyes flickered with doubt. Danica knelt beside the boy and touched his hand. Her voice softened. "Thank you," she whispered. She knew then that she had crossed a line she could never go back from. The family would likely cast her out, colder than before. But for the first time, she felt a strange sense of freedom. She had spoken the truth. She had broken the silence. The risks were high: complete exile, endless anger, maybe even hatred. But deep inside, Danica sensed something she had never felt before: the strength of her own voice. And that voice, once freed, could not be silenced again. The TV interview becomes viral. Within days, clips of Danica's calm but painful words spread across social media. News channels replayed the most striking parts, where she spoke about sleepless nights, unpaid sacrifices, and the loneliness of being the dutiful child. People all over the country began to talk about it. Some cried while watching, saying they knew someone like her. Others shared their own stories of being forgotten while caring for sick parents. Soon, Danica became more than just a quiet woman telling her truth. She became a symbol. Journalists reached out to her for interviews. Magazines wanted her story. Strangers sent her letters and messages, thanking her for saying what they had never been able to say. For the first time in her life, Danica felt seen. But her family was furious. Her mother, embarrassed and boiling with rage, decided to confront her in public. It happened at a family gathering, where relatives and friends had come together for a cousin's engagement. Everyone was talking about Danica already, some admiring her bravery, others whispering about the shame she brought to her family. Her mother stood up suddenly in front of everyone, her voice sharp as a blade. "Enough of this nonsense," she shouted. "You dare humiliate us in front of the whole nation? You dare turn strangers against your own blood?" The room fell silent. All eyes turned to Danica. Danica stood slowly, her hands steady though her heart pounded. "I didn't humiliate you. I told the truth. I carried Father's suffering while everyone else turned away. I was invisible in this family, and I will not be invisible anymore." Mark's voice cut in low but angry. "You're jealous. Admit it. You couldn't build a life of your own, so now you drag ours through the mud." Allison sneered. "You wanted attention. That's all this was. You wanted pity." Danica looked at them, her eyes sharp with pain and fury. "Pity? Do you think I wanted pity when I wiped blood from Father's lips? Do you think I wanted pity when I gave up my job, my freedom, my future, while you two lived like royalty? No. I wanted fairness. I wanted acknowledgement. I wanted to know my sacrifices mattered." The words shook the room. But then in the middle of the noise, something strange happened. An old family friend slipped a folder into Danica's hand. "You should see this," he whispered. Confused, Danica opened it. Inside were copies of documents: her father's will, earlier drafts, and legal notes. Her heart stopped as she read. The handwriting was shaky, her father's name signed, but the dates and changes did not add up. She looked up at Mark and Allison, her voice trembling but clear. "What is this?" she asked, holding up the papers. Mark's face paled. Allison's lips tightened. "These show that Father's will was changed," Danica continued, her voice growing stronger. But he was already too weak to understand what he was signing. "And the notes?" Her eyes scanned the page again. "The notes say the lawyer was pressured. Pressured by you." Gasps filled the room. Relatives leaned forward, whispering, shocked. Her mother froze in her chair, her eyes wide. "What are you talking about?" Danica's tears finally spilled, but they were not tears of weakness. They were tears of release. "You manipulated him," she said, pointing at her siblings. "You made him change the will when he could barely hold a pen. You stole my place, my recognition, my dignity. All because you were afraid of what? That I might finally matter?" Mark stammered. "That's not. You don't understand." Allison tried to grab the papers from her, but Danica pulled them close to her chest. "No more lies," she cried, her voice shaking the room. "You betrayed not just me but Father too. You used his weakness for your own gain." The room erupted in noise, relatives demanding answers, friends whispering in horror. Mark's face turned red with shame. Allison tried to defend herself, but her words sounded hollow. Their polished reputations, their pride, crumbled in front of everyone. Her mother covered her face with her hands, but whether from shame or anger, no one could tell. Danica stood tall in the center of it all, tears streaming down her cheeks. For once she didn't feel small. She didn't feel invisible. The truth was out. Everyone saw her. Everyone finally understood what she had carried, what she had suffered, what she had lost. Her shoulders trembled, but her voice was calm. I don't need your approval anymore. I only needed the truth to be known. And in that moment, as the room buzzed with the shattered pieces of her siblings' lies, Danica felt something new: freedom. For the first time in her life she was truly seen. Danica challenges the will with newfound courage. The folder of documents gave her strength she never thought she had. For years she had stayed silent, carrying her pain alone. But now, she refused to be quiet any longer. She hired a lawyer, and for the first time in her life, she stood against her family not with tears, but with determination. The legal battle began. Mark and Allison laughed at first, confident that they would win. Their mother turned colder than ever, refusing to speak to Danica except through sharp glares in the courtroom. But outside those walls, something different was happening. The public supported Danica. People remembered her interview. They remembered the sacrifices she had made. Letters, calls, and even strangers in the street told her, "You are not alone. You are fighting for all of us who were forgotten." Her nephew remained her strongest ally. Whenever she felt tired or afraid, he would visit, bringing his small smile and innocent words. "You're my hero, Aunt Danica," he said one day, sitting beside her. "You're brave." Those words warmed her heart more than anything else. In court, the truth began to show itself. The siblings' polished words and fake smiles started to crack under pressure. Hospital records proved that Danica had been the one by her father's side every day. Nurses testified that she was the only child who stayed through the night. Neighbors told stories of seeing her carry heavy bags of medicine, hearing her father's weak voice thanking her, and watching her walk home exhausted but still faithful. Mark stumbled when asked why his father's signature appeared shaky and rushed on the final will. Allison grew nervous when pressed about conversations with the lawyer. Slowly, their lies began to fall apart. Danica sat quietly, watching the truth unfold. She did not need to shout. She did not need to fight with insults. The facts spoke for her. At last, the judge delivered the decision. "Danica," he said firmly, "your sacrifices cannot be ignored. While the will was changed, evidence shows it was done under questionable circumstances. You are entitled to a rightful share." It was not total victory. She would not inherit everything her siblings had stolen. But it was enough. Enough to prove that her years of devotion mattered. Enough to show that she was not invisible. Tears filled her eyes, not of sadness, but of relief. She had been heard. She had been recognized. Her siblings stormed out of the courtroom, their heads lowered, their reputations damaged. Her mother did not look at her. But Danica no longer cared. She no longer needed their approval. She walked out of the courthouse into the sunlight, breathing deeply. For the first time, her chest felt light. She was free, free from their control, free from their silence, free from their cruelty. With her share, she moved into a modest but warm apartment, where she could finally rest. But rest was not all she wanted. She wanted to keep speaking, to keep telling her story. Invitations came from groups and organizations who wanted her to talk about caregiving, sacrifice, and the importance of valuing those who give everything for family. She stood before crowds, no longer the quiet middle child, but a strong woman with a clear voice. She spoke with dignity, not bitterness. She spoke for all the invisible caretakers who had been overlooked, for those who had sacrificed their lives without thanks. People clapped, cried, and told her she gave them courage. And as she stood on those stages, or looked out the window of her new home at the city lights, Danica knew she had gained something far greater than money. She had gained herself. Danica, standing in front of a modest apartment window, looked out at the city lights. The night was quiet, the hum of traffic below sounding far away. She wrapped her arms around herself, not out of fear or loneliness, but out of peace. This was her space, her home. Behind her, the TV played softly. On the screen was her own face, her interview replaying for the third time that night. She looked different there, stronger, calmer, someone who had finally learned to speak. Sitting on the couch, her young nephew watched with bright eyes, his small hands gripping a pillow. "Aunt Danica," he said with pride. "That's you. Everyone is listening to you now." She turned to him and smiled, her eyes soft. Walking over, she sat beside him, brushing his hair gently with her hand. The warmth of his presence reminded her that love, though small, was still real. As the applause from the TV filled the room, Danica leaned close and whispered, almost to herself, "I didn't need their approval. I only needed to find my own voice." The boy didn't fully understand, but he smiled anyway, pressing his head against her arm. She kissed his forehead and looked back at the glowing lights outside her window. There was sadness, yes, sadness for the years lost, for the love she never received. But there was also strength. For the first time in her life, she felt whole. She had broken free from the chains of silence and cruelty. Sometimes she realized the greatest inheritance is not money or property. It is freedom. Freedom from those who never valued you. Freedom to build a life that is finally your own. Danica closed her eyes for a moment, letting that truth settle in her heart. When she opened them again, she was smiling. The city lights still shimmered, and for the first time, they felt like they were shining for her. Hey friends. Two hearts, thanks for sticking around till the end. Don't forget to like, drop a comment, and hit that subscribe button for more stories. See you next time. Waving hand.